a huge national effort to halt the growth of this virus, there will come a moment when no health service in the world could possibly cope.
This time will be remembered. We've got to remember what we've gone through and learn from that.
The coronavirus is the biggest threat this country has faced for decades, and this country is not alone. All over the world we're seeing
But we must learn from this time.
And I know that as they have in the past, so many times, the people of this country will rise to that challenge.
History repeats itself. It has to. No one listens. And at this time, we need to be people who listen and who learn.
In this fight, we can be in no doubt that each and every one of us is directly enlisted. Each and every one of us is now obliged to join together.
Learning from lockdown, because if we don't learn from lockdown, history might repeat itself.
Hi, my name is Phil and I'm part of Bridge Church in Ipswich. Today we are carrying on with our theme, which is lessons from lockdown, and in particular we are considering uncertainty. You may be uncertain as to why I am talking to you from a field full of cabbages, it would seem. I don't know about you, but I didn't actually need a pandemic to experience uncertainty in my life. I think I would go as far as to say that uncertainty is probably endemic within human life. I mean, it's something that cuts across history, cuts across social and economic boundaries and racial, gender, all those sorts of things. We may experience different levels of uncertainty, and we may experience different effects. But yeah, it may range from something like, will I eat today? Where will I sleep? How can I feed my family? How will I secure a job? What will tomorrow look like? When will my troubles be over? What will I do with my life? And then there's the emotional and mental and relationship uncertainties that we may all experience. What did happen to me as a child? Why did that happen? How did that relationship go so wrong? Who can I trust? Why can't I just be normal? How can I be happier in life? Who, when, why, where, how? Are these questions that you find yourself asking you each day? Sometimes it's from the mundane and innocuous, you know, like is he really going to do the whole talk in the middle of a cabbage field? To sometimes the most fundamental: who am I? Why am I here? And many of these questions were already here, and others have come about because of the pandemic. And maybe lockdown has brought some into closer focus and greater prominence, and generally made us aware of our vulnerabilities. I just want to invite you to take a moment just to think about the uncertainties that you might have in your life, and just consider how much of an effect they have on you, and how much they affect your life and govern what you decide and who you trust and things like that. So let's just have a moment in this cabbage field just to consider that. You know, I think uncertainty often comes about because of choices that people make. Either it's choices that other people have made that affect us, either directly or indirectly. Or maybe it's choices that we've made ourselves, either consciously or subconsciously. in effect, life is a bit like a journey, a bit like the walk I'm on at the moment. And it has twists and turns, and it means that we can't always see where we're going and where we're going to end up. There is therefore natural uncertainty in life. Where will we go? Who will we meet? What will happen to us? Where will we end up? And sometimes you come to a point where you have to decide which way you're going to go. A bit like, I could now go down that path, or I could go down that path. I think we'll try this one and see where we end up. Well, I never expected that path to take me here, to St Nick's Church. Who would have thought it was just round the corner from a cabbage field? And I'm not talking about Portman Road football ground. So this is where Bridge Church meets. Well, supposed to be meeting. We started 2020 planting a new church. We met here informally in the cafe where we got a bit organised. We gained a vision of maybe where we were going to go, getting to know one another a bit better before officially launching in April. Of course, that didn't happen, not physically anyway. But it made us ramp up our online communication so much quicker. It's also perhaps made us a bit uncertain, and I wonder if it's the same for your church, of what we should be doing, of what the future holds, of how we should be. And I think for us it's made us pray more, listen more, and question more. Maybe uncertainty brings us to rely on something. For us as church and as individuals, hopefully that's God. But I wonder what else we can come to rely on. The uncertainty of the times means that we have to question more. There's so much talk of the new normal, but what is that and how does it look? And how can it be effective in enriching life? People ask whether what we were doing before in society, our reliance on travel, our general busyness, and how little time we maybe spent with those we love and just others in society, was ever really right, and that the current times have maybe allowed us to reconsider those. And for the church, whilst we have maybe adapted in the short term to online services and Zoom meetings, will we ever be able to go back to meeting like we did, at least without wearing face masks? But furthermore, have we spent too much time and priority meeting in these places when actually we should be prioritising being out there, not in the car park, out in society? If you want to think more about the relevance of church, you can look up Donna's talk from the 16th of August, which was just an amazing talk on perhaps, just how we should be, and I just found it really inspiring. So if you haven't heard that, I would urge you to look that up. But what is it we have to do and perhaps should be different? How can that look and work? What if we need to change? What may we need to give up and lose? But what will be gained? Whether it's uncertainty in our individual lives, or where we work, or in the church, or anywhere else in life, all of this can make us feel vulnerable. And it means that we need a foundation of certainty that grounds our emotions, our anxieties, but also our visions and our dreams. Now, as this is a talk in church, well, beside it, you can guess that I'm going to say I think that comes from God. But more on that in just a minute. I think I need to find a quieter place to talk about that, so we'll take a walk over here and see what we can find. Well, I found this nice little quiet spot just around the corner from the church. I love being by the sea. People talk of thin places, places maybe where you become a bit more aware of the natural world around you, places where you can be quiet and just be still and maybe even become a bit more aware of God. There's a guy in the Bible called Elijah, and I think he spent a lot of time in thin places because he was very aware of God around him a lot of the time, and he took God's messages to people who, well, let's just say that they were not quite as accepting. There's a story of a king who had had enough of Elijah and basically swore that he would have him killed by the end of the next day. So Elijah did what any good God-fearing person would do. He ran away and he went and hid under a bush, and after that he ran into the desert, and eventually he found a cave and he hid in the cave. Now Elijah must have been just racked with uncertainty and anxiety about how his future was going to go, and just a mixture of emotions in that dark cave. And God decided that he was going to actually show himself to Elijah. And now, I don't know about you, but my image of God showing himself would be sort of, clouds opening, lots of smoke and lights and special effects, and eventually God appears in the middle of all of that. But actually, it was even more powerful than that. In 1 Kings 19 it says this: "All at once a strong wind shook the mountain and shattered the rocks, but the Lord was not in the wind. Next there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. Then there was a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. Finally, there was a gentle breeze, and when Elijah heard it, he covered his face with his coat. He went out and stood in the entrance to the cave." I love this image of God so much more than a visual thing of sort of showbiz, physical appearance. Not in a storm or an earthquake or a fire, but in a gentle breeze, an all-pervading gentle breeze. You must have had those moments in life where you just thought, I just wish a big pointy finger would just come down and show me the right way to go. Or maybe something supernatural would happen just to sort out a problem. Or maybe God would show himself to you in a dramatic way to help you believe for the first time, or maybe just to deepen your faith again and again. Wouldn't it be good if God himself came down and showed us the way to truth and to life? Oh, hang on. Maybe John 14 verse 6. The strongest relationships that I've had have been ones that have been developed over time. We've got to know each other, we've got to be honest with each other, we've been had times where we've laughed and where we've cried together. We've just been honest, and God knows that our faith, our relationship with him, will be at its deepest when we spend time with him. Often away from the noise of life and the busyness, just spend time in that gentle breeze. We've all spent a week ago, a whole week in stifling temperatures. It was almost unbearable, wasn't it? And one evening I just stood in our back doorway, and suddenly just this breeze just blew across, and it was the most amazing thing. So what does all this have all to do with uncertainty? Well, maybe if you are in a metaphorical cave right now with lots of stuff going on and uncertainty in the middle of all of that, maybe you need to come to the entrance and stand in the breeze. I just want to tell you a time when I was 15 and I struggled a bit with uncertainty. I started going to church when I was 10, and by the time I was 13 I thought, yeah, there's something in this, and I prayed a prayer that I wanted to follow Jesus. But the next couple of years I just struggled with just feeling not good enough, just thinking, well, you know, God, how can you accept me with how I am? And yeah, and just uncertainty of lots of other things that had gone on in my life, and who I was as a teenager, and where my life was going, and all of that sort of stuff. And one time I found myself walking along a beach, not dissimilar to this, with some friends, but I was off to one side from the friends, which was quite normal, and I found myself just praying to God, really, just talking to him. But I was talking to the sea, like the sea was like God, which I suppose is quite apt, because you can't see where it starts and where it finishes. It has this constant ebb and flow, and but it's just there, and it's huge. And I was just sort of talking to God about all of this stuff that was going on in my head, and I saw this pallet, you know, like this shipping pallet, and it was just floating just off the sea, which is quite unusual. I've never seen a big shipping pallet just floating along the sea before. And then, if that wasn't unusual enough, I suddenly had this, I can describe it as like a thought that came into my head that was just so far away from what I was thinking, and it was so authoritative but calming and natural, yeah, and it just said, this thought just said, you see that shipping pallet over there, you know, if you had to carry that around with you all the time, it would be heavy. I mean, people would say, oh, here's Phil with his shipping pallet, you know, why is he carrying all of that around again? But on the sea, it weighs virtually nothing. It just gets tossed around like it's just a matchstick, and eventually it will be just consumed by the sea, and it will no longer exist. And that's like all of your uncertainty, all of the things that you're carrying, this sense of not being good enough, lack of self-worth, and all the stuff that's gone on in your life. You can throw that onto me. You can trust me with that. You don't have to keep carrying it around. And I just found that a life-changing moment for me. And I just wanted to share it with you, just as this sense of maybe uncertainty in your life, that God is that certainty. If that wasn't enough, there's a guy called Moses, you know, bulrushes and parting seas and things like that. And one time when God spoke to him, he said to God, well, who shall I tell the people has sent me? Seems a bit strange. I guess he's sort of asking God, well, you know, what's your name? And I love this because I think it's just so cool. But God said, I am. Tell them that I am has sent you. I mean, that's the opposite of uncertainty, isn't it? To call yourself I am. I am. Now, I guess that should be enough, really. But I think God knows that, you know, sometimes we question, well, I am, what does that mean? So later on in Exodus 34, God went on to say this, I am the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness, maintaining love to thousands, and forgiving wickedness, rebellion and sin. And of course later on he went to do that through Jesus, who called himself the way, the truth and the life. Well, I guess that just leaves us to go back to where we started. So I think it's over this way. Right, so we found it back to where we started. When we were here earlier, we thought about life being like a journey with twists and turns, naturally bringing us uncertainty, which this whole pandemic has maybe highlighted and heightened in our minds. And we spoke about decisions that others make and that we make ourselves that can affect our experience of uncertainty. There was one decision made by somebody else that affects us all. Romans 5 verse 8 says, God has shown us how much he loves us. It was while we were still sinners that Christ died for us. And that first decision to rescue us means that we stand at a moment where we have to decide which path to take, to accept that love, to move closer to the entrance of the cave, to be in the breeze, to stop carrying the heavy pallet of that stuff with us, or not, just to carry on as we are. I can only say from my own experience that in a life surrounded by uncertainty, he brings a peace that is hard to understand, impossible to get from anything else, and quick to soak deep into your soul. To finish with, I'm going to pray a prayer, and whether it's the first time you may have thought that this is a path you would want to take, or maybe it's the 101st time that you choose to walk it again, because if you're like me, I often find myself going on detours, then please feel free to pray with me. Lord God, I am. You are everything. The God who created me, loves me, knows me. I'm sorry when I get things wrong, and I often go down paths that I know aren't good. Decisions other people have made have affected me, and decisions I've made have affected me and brought uncertainty and anxiety that I live with now. But I choose right now to come and stand in the entrance of the cave. I choose to walk in the breeze of God. I choose to follow the path that has opened up because of Jesus, to walk humbly with you. And that heavy pallet of stuff that I carry around, I throw over to you. In Jesus' name, Amen.